Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We're 3 parties away from quorum. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. We have reached quorum, so we are at document 73, trade in endemic species. Document 73, trade in endemic species. This document is submitted by Brazil and Ecuador. I turn to one of the authors to introduce the document. So Brazil or Ecuador, please take the floor. And please be reminded, you only have 3 minutes. Thank you. Brazil or Ecuador. Thank you. Brazil or Ecuador? Brazil, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There was much noise here. I wasn't able to hear. Sorry for that. Brazil took so we talk about trade in endemic species. Brazil took into account valuable suggestions received from both parties and the Secretary in response to our original proposal contained in document CoP20 Doc 73. In order to avoid any overlap with discussion on legal acquisition findings. InfoDoc 56 contains our revised proposal. Our objective is to strengthen cooperation and transparency among parties in a way that fully respects national sovereignty and complements rather than overlap with acquisition findings, legal acquisition findings. Endemic species which occur exclusively within a single country often benefit from national development conservation programs or specific domestic protections. For this reason, Brazil proposed that parties to conduct prior consultation with the country of origin before authorizing re-export, export, or import of threatened species listed in Appendix 1 and 2. To support this process, we also request the Secretariat to issue a notification, invite parties to provide information on their endemic species, and to create a dedicated section of CITES website, enabling authorities to easily verify when consultation may be needed. Finally, we call for a study to first assess trade and its impact in threatened species, and to identify resolutions that would require review to ensure the topic is properly addressed. Brazil invites parties to support these balanced and constructive proposals. Then, Madam Chair, I would ask if I need to read our amendment proposal contained in InfoDoc 56, or if that's not needed. Thank you.
Brazil, yes, please.
Thank you. So the first decision, 20AA, is after endemic species listed in Appendix 1 and 2, we would strike out the rest of the text and replace 4 that are subject to nationally developed conservation programs or subject to protection by national legislation in the countries of origin. Then directed to the Secretariat, a new 20BB, the Secretariat shall issue a notification to parties requesting a complete list of the endemic species they have included in CITES appendix, or which they are concerned about. and whether this species is subject to nationally developed conservation programs or subject to protection by national legislation. Then a new 20cc, the Secretariat shall create a section on the CITES website dedicated to endemic species, integrating information provided by parties on their endemic species, which shall include a search engine to locate information on each species. Then this new 20cc, the Secretariat shall, and then we will replace for the, all the text that comes after with the following text. A, subject to availability of external resources and in consultation with the Standing Committee. Little 1, develop the terms of reference to define the objectives and scope for study on trade in threatened endemic species listed in Appendix 1 and 2, taking into consideration concerns raised in document CoP20 Doc 73. Little 2, undertake a study based on the terms of reference agreed by the Standing Committee. 2A, map and analyze current international trade in listed threatened endemic species, including main trade species, trade pathways and networks, and main markets for the species in this trade, and process used by parties to confirm legal origin of species in trade. Characterize the overall impact of international trade in threatened endemic species listed in Appendix 1 and 2 on wild population in the countries of origin, and identify any issue relating to legal acquisition of species in trade. And C, identify resolutions that may warrant review to ensure identified issues, included legal acquisition findings of the species in trade, and consultation with range states are adequately addressed. And then finally, the new, to be directed to the Standing Committee, a new 20EE. The Standing Committee shall monitor the progress in implementation of Decision 20AA, inform the terms of reference for this study proposed in Decision 20DD, assess the study submitted by the Secretary as per Decision 20DD, Paragraph B, and where appropriate, make recommendations to the 21st meeting of the Conference of All Parties for strengthening resolution associated with verification of legal acquisition of endemic species by the parties. All those changes are indicated in InfoDoc 56. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Brazil. New Zealand, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We thank Brazil and Ecuador for this document. We share the experiences described with our threatened endemic geckos having been removed from the wild and then smuggled out of our country in violation of our national laws. The smuggled animals or their offspring have then been reported as bred in captivity and traded as if they were legally acquired. As a remote archipelago over 1,000 kilometres from the nearest continent, New Zealand has many endemic species. For example, 70% of our native birds, 80% of our native vascular plants, 90% of our native invertebrates, and 100% of our native reptiles, amphibians, and land mammals are endemic. Most of these species are of great importance to New Zealanders, and especially to Maori, our indigenous people, for whom many are taonga or treasures. All of our endemic vertebrates and some endemic invertebrates are fully protected, and most have never been legally exported. We generally support the revised draft decisions presented by Brazil in InfoDoc 56, based on the Secretariat's comments and input from a number of parties. However, New Zealand believes that there are still further amendments required, especially building in some scientific investigation of this or input into it. And so we're proposing some new decisions and an amendment, or a new decision and amendment to existing decision, to allow the compiled lists called for in the notification to be passed to the Animals and Plants Committee for their assessment, particularly of the nomenclature and the claims of endemicity. New Zealand is fortunate to have a representative of the Cook Islands government join our Oceania meetings as an observer while they contemplate the pros and cons of joining the CITES family. She made a very good point that non-parties and observers should also be encouraged to submit lists of protected endemic species they are concerned about, rather than restrict it to parties only. And therefore we were proposing addition of words to draft decision 20BB to accommodate including non-parties and observers as well. And I've got draft text that I could read, but my feel is that there are probably going to be a number of amendments, and this will probably end up at a working group. And so I'll probably leave it here now, but I could read out our proposed text, which the Secretariat does have if required, and Brazil also has a copy. Thank you.
New Zealand, I think it'd be good if you just read it out. Thank you.
Okay, I'll go over my 3 minutes, which is up now. Okay, so to incorporate scientific input into this subject, we propose an amendment to the new draft decision 20BB, which would be amended by adding the words, "The compiled lists would then be passed to the Animal and Plants Committees for their assessments." And then a new decision, which is directed to the Animals Committee and Plants Committee, which would be a new 20EE. Following responses to the notification to the parties called for in decision 20BB, the Animals Committee and Plants Committee shall assess the lists of species provided by parties to ensure that the nomenclature and claim of endemic status are correct. They should then inform the Secretariat of any amendments required before such lists are published in accordance with Decision 20DD. And our amendments to incorporate the inclusion of non-parties and observers in providing information in response to that notification. So it would require 20BB to be amended to read, the Secretariat shall issue a notification to the parties requesting parties, non-parties and observers to submit a complete list of the endemic species, etc. So addition of the words parties, non-parties and observers to submit would be the new text. And in 20CC, we also probably need to replace the words by the parties on there with pursuant to decision 20BB on. So 20CC would read, the Secretariat shall create a section on the CITES website dedicated to endemic species, integrating information provided pursuant to decision 20BB on endemic species and so on. So rather than just be limited to the responses of parties. Thank you.
Lesotho, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for giving us the floor. The Kingdom of Lesotho welcomes this document prepared by Brazil and Ecuador and expresses strong support for its objectives. We share the concern about the endemic species being illegally traded and the range state sometimes being bypassed. Lesotho also calls for attaching due weight to the need to conduct prior consultation with the country of origin, enhanced capacity building and information sharing to verify illegal acquisition. As such, Madam Chair, we support the adoption of the draft decisions in Annex 1 as amended by Ecuador. Thank you, Chair.
Papua New Guinea, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As this is the first time Papua New Guinea is taking the floor, Papua New Guinea would like to thank the government and people of Uzbekistan for the warm hospitality and acknowledge Secretariat for a wonderful coordination for CoP20. PNG therefore appreciates the effort of Brazil and Ecuador for submitting document 73. As a country that is so diverse in both nature and culture, with high species endemism in both marine and terrestrial environment, it is very vital that we take necessary measures to ensure population of our endemic species in the wild is not threatened. PNG boasts more than 7% of biodiversity and one of the 10 mega diverse countries globally, and our people depend entirely on this unique species, not only for livelihood, but for spiritual and cultural values. Therefore, PNG support the draft decision on trading endemic species, particularly under Annex 1 of this present document, directed to the CITES Secretariat, and request the terms of reference of suggested studies under 20BB, small a, be circulated to all parties concerned. And PNG would also like to support New Zealand's amendments. I thank you, Chair.
I have a long list of speakers, so I will just take a few more from different regions, and I will then suggest a way forward. Ecuador, you can have the floor.
Gracias, señora presidenta. Ecuador, como país megadiverso, subraya la urgencia de fortalecer los mecanismos de la Convención para proteger las especies que son intrínsecamente vulnerables debido a su distribución geográfica limitada y, en muchos casos, al reducido tamaño de sus poblaciones. Este documento aborda una vulnerabilidad crítica y creciente dentro del ámbito de las CITES, la amenaza particular que representa el comercio internacional para las especies endémicas. Ecuador, como país megadiverso, es único custodio de un vasto número de especies que no existen en ninguna otra parte del planeta, lo que subraya nuestra responsabilidad ineludible y la urgencia de esta propuesta. Ecuador insta a las partes a adoptar las medidas contenidas en el documento 73, enmendado a través del documento informativo 56, las cuales están diseñadas para robustecer la aplicación de la Convención a estas especies vulnerables. La adopción de estas decisiones representa un acto de cautela y responsabilidad global frente a estas especies únicas. Muchas gracias.
Sri Lanka, you have the floor.
Sri Lanka is a global biodiversity hotspot with exceptionally high reptile endemism. Our domestic legislation has effectively banned the export of reptiles since 1964. When strict restrictions were introduced on the issuance of permits, these may only be granted to advance scientific knowledge to supply accredited museums or zoological gardens or for exchange with local institutions. Commercial export has never been permitted, and Sri Lanka maintains a strict zero export policy for its endemic reptiles. Despite this, Sri Lankan endemic and CITES listed reptiles, Ceratophora, CoP20 and others, are appearing in international markets labeled as captive bred. These species are assessed as endangered or critically endangered in Sri Lanka's National Red List, and claims of commercial captive breeding do not align with their biology or any legal export pathway. This points to wild laundering, misuse of source codes, and weakness in verifying breeding claims outside Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka supports and welcomes Working Document 73 submitted by Brazil and Ecuador, and urges parties to take note of the information provided in the present document and adopt draft decision 20AA to 20CC contained in Annex 1 with the amendments suggested by New Zealand. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Samoa, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Samoa also supports this document and draft decision. As a country with our own critically endangered endemic species, such as the manumea, one of the closest living relatives of the dodo bird, we understand how vulnerable unique island species are to any form of illegal taking or laundering. Even when trade is not the primary threat, their rarity alone can make them very attractive targets. We also support the amendments made by New Zealand. An inclusive approach is essential for protecting our endemic species worldwide. Thank you, Chair.
United States of America, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and we appreciate all of the concerns of the countries and parties who have spoke before us, and we consider this a very serious issue. The United States has some amendments to the draft decisions, and so I can go through and read them. The intention was to sort of pare down the scope of work and to focus on providing parties with the information that they need to make the legal acquisition findings and to make sure that specimens that were trafficked out of their native range doesn't continue in the trade. So for draft decision 20AA, as in the information document, the United States does not support as drafted, and we incorporated it into a subsequent draft decision. So for the new 20AA, we have the Secretariat shall issue a notification to the parties requesting a complete list of endemic species found in their territories that are included in the appendices. Any information regarding prior exports of the species, including conditions under which those exports were authorized, and whether the species are subject to nationally developed conservation programs or subject to the protection of national legislation. And then we have a new 20BB, which would be the 20CC in the information document, that reads, subject to extra budgetary funding, the Secretary shall integrate the information provided by the parties in Decision 20AA into the CITES Lex, the checklists of CITES species, or other appropriate mechanisms on the CITES website to support parties in undertaking required legal acquisition findings for trade and endemic species. And then we have a 20CC for the Secretariat to report to the Standing Committee on the implementation of 20AA and 20BB. The United States doesn't support the study that is called for in the information document. However, we do have another draft decision 20DD, which parties are encouraged, as applicable, in cases where there is uncertainty about the legal origin of parental or founder stock for specimens of species included in Appendix 1 and 2, to make use of the draft guidance on the chain of custody required for demonstrating the legal acquisition of the parental or breeding stock contained in Annex 3 of COP Doc 49, comma, the responses to the notification to the parties referred to in Decision 20AA, the CITES webpage dedicated to endemic species generated under 20BB, and through and consult with the country of origin as appropriate. Then we have another just draft decision directed to the Standing Committee for the Standing Committee to monitor progress on the implementation of Decision 20AA, 20BB, and 20CC, and where appropriate, make recommendations to the 21st meeting of the Conference of the Parties. I hope that's helpful, but I can read it again, or I know we're going to go to a drafting group or something.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a really, really long list of speakers, and I see that everyone supports having draft decisions. It's just the language and what to include and not to include. So I think I will suggest to go ahead to have a working group, to start a working group. The terms of reference will be taking into account the draft decisions in document 73, the Secretariat amendments, the amendments proposed by Brazil, by New Zealand, and from the floor, from US as well, and the comments and amendments raised to draft a revised consolidated set of draft decision. So I'll just say again, so the mandate will be taking into account the draft decisions in document 73, the Secretariat amendments, the amendments proposed and raised, the amendments proposed by Brazil in the information document 56 and by New Zealand, and the comments and amendments raised on the floor to draft a revised consolidated set of draft decisions for further consideration. Okay, so technician, can you clear the list? And then I will now, if countries that are interested to be in the working group, please press your button now. And also for parties that actually provided edits, can I trouble you to also send a copy to the Secretariat? Thank you. Okay, I'll read out the list now, the members. United States of America, European Union, Canada, Germany, Argentina, United Kingdom, Mexico, Brazil, Australia, Jamaica, Lesotho, India, New Zealand, Denmark, Papua New Guinea, Sweden, Japan, South Africa, Fiji, Colombia, Italy, Ecuador, Samoa, Russian Federation, Uruguay, Qatar, Dominican Republic, Panama, Belgium, Honduras, Chile, Liberia, Switzerland, Bolivia, Solomon Islands, Guatemala, Spain. Bolivia, yeah, okay. Now I open for non-parties and observer organizations. WCS, Pet Advocacy Network, SPREP, Parrot Breeder Association, Lewis and Clark, IWMC, EAZA, National Animal Interest Alliance, Born Free Foundation, European Pet Organization, SSN, IUCN, Center for Biological Diversity, Sustainable Users Network, US Association of Reptile Keepers, Ornamental Fish International. And now I would like to look for a chair. Thank you, Australia. Australia will chair the working group. Thank you. European Union, you want to make an intervention?
Yes, thank you. I would just like to clarify with regard to the mandate of the working group. You only mentioned that the edits and comments that parties have already made would be taken into account. However, as you mentioned, there was a long list of parties who wish to speak, and we also have some additional suggestions, and we hope that this can be also part of the mandate of the working group. Thank you.
Okay, so I will just repeat the mandate again, but of course, during the working group, that's why there's a working group. There will be discussions. Even if it's not included in the even if it's not raised on the floor, I'm sure it'll be taken into account. But to be specific, the mandate will be taking into account the draft decisions in Document 73, the Secretariat amendments, the amendments proposed by Brazil in Info Doc 56 and by New Zealand, the comments and amendments raised on the floor, and in the working group itself to draft a revised consolidated set of draft decisions. Okay, so now we are at document 34, National Laws for Implementation of the Convention. The document is submitted by the Secretariat in consultation with the Chair of the Standing Committee. So the Conference of the Parties is invited to adopt the decisions contained in Annex 1, consider the draft guidance in Annex 2, and the recommendation to make this guidance available on the CITES website as appropriate. And lastly, to delete decisions 19.58 to 19.62. So before I open the floor, I would like to first invite the committee to congratulate the 12 parties who reached Category 1 in the National Legislation Project for their work well done. So these are Andorra, Botswana, India, Lao PDR, Maldives, Mozambique, Pakistan, Sierra Leone, Tunisia, Uganda, Tanzania, and Lebanon, who adopted additional legislation and reached Category 1. Let's give them applause. Okay, so now we will look at the recommendations. I give the floor to the Secretariat for an update.
Thank you, Chair. In addition to these 12 parties, the Secretariat has received information that Zambia adopted revised legislation yesterday. The CITES Secretariat is in touch with Zambia to confirm Category 1 status as soon as possible, but we propose that the committee at least notes the adoption of additional legislation by Zambia at this session in addition to these 12 parties reaching Category 1. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So now we will first look at recommendations 38A, adopt the draft decisions in Annex 1. So we look at that first. I will now open the floor to parties. Bahrain, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Bahrain is blessed to report that its national CITES legislation is now fully aligned with the requirements for placement in Category 1 under the National Legislations Project and effectively implements the Convention at the national level. Our law meets the 4 core criteria for Category 1 classification. Following the Secretary's legislation's analysis of Bahrain law and the subsequent exchange of clarifications in November 2023, only a limited number of technical questions remain under discussion with the secretariats. The minor questions are not part of the classification. Bahrain wishes to inform the Conference of the Parties that detailed implementing regulations under the national CITES decisions were adopted and entered into force last week, and Bahrain will duly notify the Secretariat of these updated regulations. Thank you, Chair.
Bahrain, can I just get a clarification? Are you supporting the draft decisions in Annex 1?
Yes, but we'd like to report this to the standing committee or to the secretariats to consider our positions in our regulations right now.
Noted, thank you. Kenya, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Kenya supports the draft decision in Annex 1. Kenya is in the process of enacting a new wildlife legislation to strengthen the national framework for the implementation of CITES and facilitate Kenya's progression to Category 1 under the National Legislation Project. The draft Wildlife Conservation and Management Bill 2025 underwent a comprehensive public participation in May 2025 in accordance with the Constitution of Kenya and the Statutory Instruments Act. Submissions were received from members of the public, conservation partners, county governments, right holders, and other relevant stakeholders. Kenya expresses its appreciation to the CITES Secretariat for the detailed guidance and constructive technical comments provided on the draft bill. These observations, together with the stakeholders' input, are being consolidated to inform the next revision of the bill. The updated draft will, upon completion of the national legislative and parliamentary processes, be formally transmitted to the Secretariat. Madam Chair, Kenya reaffirms its commitment to finalizing and enacting the bill at the earliest opportunity. At the same time, Kenya notes that legislative drafting and enactment are constitutional, parliamentary, and political processes that follow established procedures and may require adequate time to conclude. Kenya will continue to keep the Secretariat fully informed of the progress. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, parties, I still have quite a number of speakers. Please just let me know whether you support the draft decisions. We are still behind 1.5 days, so I really appreciate your updates on your country's legislations, but I just need to know if you support the draft decisions in Annex 1. Thank you. Syrian Arab Republic, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The Management Authority of CITES in the Syrian Arab Republic highly appreciated the efforts made by the Secretariat of the Convention and the Standing Committee in providing effective support for the implementation of the Convention. We received a letter from the CITES Secretariat confirming Syria's compliance with the Convention.
Syrian Arab Republic, I'm sorry, I have to cut you off. I am only asking if you support the draft decision. I do not have time, sorry. So do you support the draft decision? Thank you. Zambia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Zambia fully supports the draft decision. And Madam Chair, if you do allow me under 1 minute to just...
No, I'm sorry, Zambia, sir. I really have no time.
Oh,
thank you for
Madam Chair,
supporting the draft decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
United Kingdom, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. In the interest of time, we also support the draft decisions and the draft guidance in Annex 2 and are content for that to be published on the CITES website. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I did get consensus on, I'm seeing consensus in supporting the draft decisions in Annex 1. So I am going to go ahead to say that the committee decides on the draft decisions. The committee accepts the draft decisions on national laws for implementation of the Convention contained in Document 34, Annex 1. So if there are any strong objections from parties, please press your buttons. Thank you very much. So now we'll go to recommendation 38B to consider the draft guidance and also request the Secretariat to make this guidance available on the CITES website. I open the floor to parties. United States of America, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The United States supports the draft guidance. Thank you.
European Union, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I speak on behalf of the EU and its member states. Regarding the recommendation in paragraph 38B on publishing the guidance as contained in Annex 2, we feel that some elements merit further discussion and refinement. We do value the drafting of the guidance, but would like to suggest a review of the guidance by the Standing Committee. We have the impression that we need to further explore issues, for instance, around scope, duration, and process, in particular involving the Standing Committee and/or its chair. We think these issues deserve more time for in-depth discussion. which is best placed in the context of the Standing Committee. In addition, the Standing Committee has not yet had an opportunity to discuss and debate the current version of the draft guidance. For that, we would like to propose the addition of the following decision. And that's the decisions contained in Annex 1. Under Directed to the Standing Committee, insert a new decision, 20 EE. It will read as follows. At its 81st meeting, comma, the Standing Committee shall review the draft guidance on the implementation of the Convention in the event of exceptional circumstances that impede the proper functioning of CITES at the national level, comma, as drafted by the Secretariat, and submit recommendations to the Secretariat as appropriate. The addition of this decision to the Standing Committee would then require renumbering of the following decision being 20 FF. Thank you.
Zimbabwe, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, for giving me the opportunity. Zimbabwe supports the draft guidance and looks forward to see their publication on the website. Thank you.
Maldives, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Maldives supports the draft guidance to be published in the website. Thank you.
Russian Federation, you have the floor.
Спасибо, госпожа председатель. Российская Федерация благодарит секретариат за проведенную работу, однако мы не можем согласиться с редакцией приложения 2, которое представлено нам сегодня. Мы согласны с предложением Евросоюза о необходимости продолжения работы над данным guidance. В частности, мы обратили внимание на пункт 2 и пункт 4, пункт 7, прошу прощения, данного приложения, в котором содержится ссылка на вооруженные конфликты. Мы полагаем, что этот вопрос выходит за пределы мандата CITES и считаем, что его целесообразно, данный проект, данное приложение целесообразно продолжить рассматривать в постоянном комитете. Спасибо.
Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Regarding the draft guidance, Canada appreciates the consideration given by the Secretariat on guidance on the implementation of the Convention in the event of exceptional circumstances that impede the proper functioning of CITES. The draft guidance provides an acceptable broad context for defining events of exceptional circumstance and the respective roles for the parties and the Secretariat in such situations. Canada recommends that the guidance be considered a living document and be improved when necessary based on feedback from parties that have experienced exceptional circumstances. As such, Canada supports the publication of the draft guidance on the CITES website. Thank you, Chair.
Australia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Australia supports the publication of the guidance on the website.
Israel, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. As the EU, we think that the Standing Committee should see it first. Thank you, Chair.
United Kingdom, you have the floor.
Just to reiterate the comments of others and our intervention earlier, that we would be happy for the publication of the guidance at this stage, noting that guidance can always be improved, but we're content with the draft as it stands. Thank you.
United States of America, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We appreciate the comments by our colleague from Canada, and we would like to see the draft guidance published on the website and acknowledge that it is a living document and can be refined as needed.
Fiji, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Fiji joins others in supporting that we welcome the publication of the guidance as it is, and we also concur that it's an iterative document that could be changed and improved going forward. Thank you.
New Zealand, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. New Zealand supports others who've supported the publication of the guidance on the website as a living document that can be updated over time. Thank you.
I now open the floor to non-parties and observer organizations. Okay, so hearing from the floor, I think parties do see merit in this guidance. I think it's just on the publication of the website and also the review. So what I'm suggesting is that we can put in a new draft decision based on what parties have said, that it is a living document. It can be reviewed continuously based on parties' feedback. So the draft decision could be something like under directed to standing committee. So it could be a new para 20 EE. Directed to the standing committee shall keep under review the draft guidance on exceptional circumstances impeding the proper functioning of CITES at the national level, and update as appropriate. So that it is still being reviewed, it will continue to be reviewed, and it can be amended. I would like to get some reflection from European Union, Russian Federation, Israel, if that can be a compromise. Russian Federation, you have the floor.
Госпожа председатель, спасибо. Хотели уточнить, мы не возражаем против данной формулировки, но будет ли данный draft guidance опубликован? Мы возражаем против его публикации в том виде, в котором есть. Мы за работу над ним далее в постоянном комитете, но против его публикации.
Israel, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We support your compromise. Thank you.
European Union, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We also accept your compromise. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we will word the language after the meeting, but it will read something like shall keep under review the draft guidance and update as appropriate. So for recommendation, Russian Federation, you have the floor.
Госпожа председатель, мы не получили ответ на наш вопрос. Будет ли гайденс опубликован или нет? Спасибо.
Yes, it will be published on the website, and I can take note of your disagreement on the summary record. Okay, I'll just read out again. So looking at document 34, recommendations 38. So the committee agrees to adopt the draft decisions with an additional new draft decision 20EE shall keep under review, the standing committee shall keep under review the guidance and update as appropriate contained in Annex 1. And then for 38B, the committee has considered and agree on the draft guidance and request the Secretariat to make this guidance available on the CITES website as appropriate. And lastly, I just want to get some feedback on deleting decisions 19.58 to 19.62. Are there any objections? Delete decisions 19.58 to 19.62. Okay, I see no requests from the floor from parties. So the committee also agrees to delete decisions 19.58 to 19.62. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. I am now going to document 37, possession of specimens of species included in Appendix 1. Document 37, submitted by the Standing Committee. So the Standing Committee did not reach an agreement at SC 78. So the identical recommendations will pass to the Conference of the Parties and the present committee. So the Conference of Parties is invited to consider two recommendations whose legislations are in different categories under the National Legislation Project. So the Conference of Parties is also invited to consider the proposed amendments to Resolution Conference 8.4, Rev CoP15, on national laws for implementation of the Convention, and to delete decision 19.67. So I would like to focus on the recommendations C and D first. C and D. So the amendments to the Resolution Conference 8.4 and also delete decision 19.67. So I open the floor to parties. Please speak your intervention for recommendation 15C and D. Thank you. European Union, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The European Union and its member states express their support for recommendations under letter C and D of document CoP20 number 37. It is the proposed changes to resolution COP84 and the deletion of decision 19.67. Thank you.
India, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. India wishes to thank the Standing Committee for the document. India wish to apprise the COP that through the amendment in the Wildlife Protection Act of India, the provisions of CITES have been incorporated in the Act. In pursuance of the amendment to the Act, rules have been framed.
India, I just want to know whether you support C and D.
Yes, ma'am. We support the C and D. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. United States of America, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We support the recommendation D and recommendation C, but with a minor edit to one of the paragraphs in the preamble that's starting with noting. Should I read the edit? Okay. So we suggest adding the CITES National Registration Project after that in the first line. So we read, noting that substantial progress has been achieved, comment by the the CITES National Registration Project. Approximately 1/3 of the parties have not yet taken the appropriate measures to enforce the provisions of the convention. Thank you.
So United States of America, just to confirm, so it reads, noting that substantial progress has been achieved by the CITES National Legislation Project, but that 1/3 of the parties and it follows, right?
Yes.
United Kingdom, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We support the proposed amendments to Resolution Conf 8.4 contained in the annex to more closely align the 4 minimum requirements of the National Legislation Project with the Convention text. However, we would like to reiterate our view that while there is good reason for parties to have provisions in place to penalise both illegal trade and possession of CITES specimens, the Convention text is more flexible, which should be appropriately considered by the Secretariat when supporting parties to improve their legislation or assessing legislation under the National Legislation Project. We can also support the deletion of Decision 1967. Thank you.
United States of America.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify our addition. It is, has been achieved, comma, but that per the CITES National Legislation Project. Thank you.
Tanzania, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The United Republic of Tanzania supports the recommendation of the Standing Committee contained in paragraph 15, and particularly C and D.
Benin, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Le Bénin soutient les recommandations C et D telles que présentées dans le document. Merci.
I open the floor to non-parties and observer organizations. National Animal Interest Alliance, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me the floor. I'm also speaking on behalf of a number of organizations that represent pet keepers, breeders, and industry. Parties at this COP have made several statements that seem to muddle the definition of legality. While ensuring trade is legal and sustainable is of the utmost importance, consideration must be given to national sovereignty, human rights, and property rights. With this document, in combination with Document 73 and Document 49, we are deeply concerned about potential abuse of the treaty for purposes other than the core mission of ensuring trade does not threaten species with extinction. It is noteworthy that this document extends the scope of the requirements of the treaty beyond trade to possession. We are particularly concerned because Brazil has clearly stated a desire to require governments to confiscate specimens not only when the founder stock cannot be established, but even in cases in which the legal chain of custody can be established. A small number of other parties seem to be in agreement. Given these statements, we are deeply concerned about potential abuse if the treaty is to require national legislation to extend beyond trade into possession. This brings in a multitude of questions regarding national sovereignty, the rights of citizens, and private property. Animals are counted as private property in most countries, and those property rights are inviolable. Following the logic, this could be used to force parties to confiscate its citizens' property simply at the request of foreign governments, even when the specimens were legally acquired. We hope that sovereign governments have laws that prohibit such actions, but the document seems to imply a push to pressure sovereign nations to enforce such procedures. Brazil has stated the importance of sovereignty, but has suggested that sovereignty is limited to range states. We cannot agree. Non-range states have sovereignty as well, and the treaty must respect that fact. Given the statements made by several parties during this COP, we must question whether the measures, such as those outlined in Doc 37, are truly intended to carry out the core mission of the Convention, or simply a backdoor to introduce divergent agendas
Alliance, please wrap up. The 2 minutes
which
is
do
up.
not align with the CITES Treaty. We therefore request parties give serious consideration to sovereignty, human rights, and property rights, and implement measures that will prevent abuse of the CITES Treaty. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so to sum up, so the committee agrees to the amendments to Resolution Conference 8.4, RevCop 15 on national laws for implementation of the convention, as contained in the annex with edits from the United States of America, and delete decision 19.67. I will now pass the floor to Secretariat for recommendations 15A and 15B.
Thank you, Chair. With the agreement to accept the amendments to Resolution Conf 8.4, there is no need to consider the recommendations in point 15.A and B. Thank you, Chair.
European Union, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I am a bit confused because we feel there's the need to express our view on the recommendations under letters A and B, for they have important consequences. So we would like to make our intervention. Thank you.
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. Regarding the recommendations under letters A and B, the European Union and its member states believe that they cannot be supported in their current form because they are not consistent with Article 8, Paragraph 1, letter A of the Convention, that reads, "The parties shall take appropriate measures to enforce the provisions of the present Convention and to prohibit trade in specimens in violation thereof. These shall include measures, A, to penalize trade in or possession of such specimens, or both, and, letter B, to provide for the confiscation or return to the state of export of such specimens." It is clear that the Convention provides parties three alternatives: to penalize illegal trade, or possession, or both. For the reason, if, for example, a party penalizes illegal trade and not possession, there is no violation of the Convention. The Secretariat itself agrees with the way we read Article 8 in the comments to this document, and we commend the Secretariat for ever clarifying its view, because this provides a shared understanding of this important provision of the Convention. However, we have to notice that the recommendations under letters A and B still point in the opposite direction, as they incorrectly imply that penalizing the possession of illegally traded specimens is an obligation for parties that comes from the Convention. As shown before, this is not what the Convention prescribes parties to do. We understand from the comments of the Secretariat that these recommendations regard the specific case of the possession of a specimen that has been illegally traded when the perpetrator of that illegal trade has not been identified. To put this particular issue in a wider frame, it must be noticed as a general comment that the Convention does not prescribe how penalties descending from Article 8 should be structured. The implementation of this article remains within each party's national legal order, and it is up to parties to decide whether implementing it through criminal, administrative, or civil measures. That said, nothing in the Convention text suggests that this discretion ceases to apply in the particular case when the perpetrator of illegal trade is unknown. The recommendation under letters A and B, however, narrow the discretion, and even if they do it in a specific scenario mentioned in the comments, they are still not consistent with the Convention text and cannot be supported. For the reasons, we believe that our parties exercise their discretion.
It's 3 minutes. Can you please wrap up? Thank you.
Yes, I'm finishing. Thank you very much and apologize. For the reason, we believe that our parties exercise their discretion and their freedom to choose the option they consider the best should not be put under the national legislation project. To conclude with a positive note, we are glad that after an interesting and long debate, we came to a shared understanding of Article 8 of the Convention as a provision that grants parties three alternative ways.
You really need to wrap up. Thank you.
I'm finished. It's the last sentence. I apologize again. To implement this provision, each one of them consistent with the Convention. Thank you.
Thank you. And I close Senegal. Do you have a comment? If not, I'm going to close.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Je prends la parole juste à la suite du commentaire du représentant de l'Union européenne. C'est vrai que nous avons la CITES et la loi nationale. Et une fois qu'un pays adhère à la CITES, il doit ajuster sa loi nationale pour prendre en compte les dispositions de la CITES, qui est une loi internationale. Alors, en cas de saisie et qu'on n'identifie pas le trafiquant, mais c'est la loi nationale qui va faire prévaloir la détention du produit. De toute façon, les infractions identifiées par la CITES sont prises en charge par la loi nationale. Et la loi nationale dit quoi? Après, même si le trafiquant est inconnu, mais nous faisons un rapport, un procès-verbal contre X, et l'État, dans le jugement final, va dire la confiscation, à quel niveau garder le produit. Voilà ce que nous faisons dans la pratique. Merci.
Thank you, and the comments are all noted. I will now close this agenda item. Okay, I'm now at document 35.1, implementation of Article 13 and Resolution Conference 14.3, Ref COP 19 on CITES compliance procedures. Document 35.1. The document is submitted by the Secretariat. The committee is requested to take note of the information and consider the proposed draft decisions found in Annex 1. The committee is also invited to adopt the amendments to Resolution Conference 14.3 in Annex 2. I would just like to remind parties that we are not discussing the individual compliance cases in this document. So instead, the focus of this committee is on the draft decisions and amendments to Annex 1 and Annex 2. I will first open the floor to parties to get comments for draft decisions contained in Annex 1. So we are looking at Annex 1 first. I open the floor to parties. Japan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And sorry, going back to the last previous agenda item, I did not get the final outcome of the recommendation on A and B. May I confirm it before going this agenda item? Thank you very much.
So recommendation A and B is not considered. United States of America, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. With regard to Annex 1 to the document, the United States supports adopting the draft decision contained in Annex 1 with a clarifying edit. We recommend the clarifying edit to delete the parentheses surrounding the phrase "or trade for commercial purposes," as this is a second type of recommendation and not a different type of the same recommendation. The United States believes that both recommendations to suspend all trade in specimens of CITES-listed species and recommendations to suspend commercial trade in CITES-listed species should be considered under this decision. Thank you, Chair.
Brazil, you have the floor.
Madam Chair, thank you very much. Actually, we would need to go back to the previous item, Madam Chair, because we would like to react to the comment from the European Union, and we didn't have the chance to see what was your conclusion. So at this point, I think because there is disagreement in not considering A and B in our view. Thank you.
Yeah, so the conclusion was that I've noted European Union's comments and also Senegal's comments, and that A and B is not considered. Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for this clarification, because we would oppose that outcome. Because in our view, it's important to have those provisions, because otherwise we would go against the spirit of this convention, which is to ensure that threatened species are conserved. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Okay, Brazil, I've already closed the agenda item, so I would just like to confirm that you want to move a motion to reopen the agenda item.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I don't think that's the right procedure, because we didn't have heard your conclusion, and we just heard your conclusion now that you are speaking on item 35, and it's a bit confusing for us to really see how we should have open a motion, because we didn't heard a conclusion. Thank you.
Yeah, Brazil, so just to confirm, is that A and B is not considered, and I've already closed the agenda item, so is that clear now? Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, we would oppose of not considering those items. Thank you.
Okay, Brazil, so I noted that you oppose the decision. Thank you. Brazil, you have the floor.
That's not the way we see this going through, Madam Chair. If a country opposes, we would like to then, if there is no other outcome, we would request a vote on that. Thank you.
I will just ask the Secretariat to explain one more time before you decide whether we want to go for a vote. Secretariat, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The reason why we suggested that the Conference of the Parties or this committee do not spend time considering recommendation A and B is because they have been taken over by the agreement to include a new provision in the resolution in paragraph 1 of the resolution and a new provision in paragraph 3 of the resolution. If you look at the text of paragraph B, 15B, it's the almost verbatim text that you have now agreed to include in the resolution. So we didn't think there was a need to consider paragraph 15B. And paragraph 15A is simply a reflection of how the Secretariat has always been reviewing national legislation when we provide comments to national legislation in category 2 and 3. So there's no decision to be made from the Conference of the Parties, so there's no recommendations to be made from this committee on paragraph 15A. So to repeat one more time, paragraph 15A was simply explaining that this has always been the way the Secretariat has been looking at national legislation, and in reminding parties that we look at whether possession of illegally traded specimen is covered by their national legislation. So it was just a reminder. And paragraph 15B is almost verbatim the language that is included in suggested to be included in paragraph 3 of resolution 8.4 and recommended to the plenary for adoption. So that was our reasoning for suggesting to the chair that we move on and advance in the agenda that the committee still has in front of it. Thank you very much.
Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. We agree with that outcome, and thank you for this clarification. So we will not oppose, not considering A and B. Thank you very much.
India and European Union, can I just confirm if your intervention is for 37 or 35.1? If it's for India?
Thank you, Chair. India is of the view that the process of implementation of Article 13 and the proposed Annexure 1 and 2 are still ambiguous and therefore request for a detailed deliberation. India suggests this matter and the draft Annexure 1 and 2 may be deliberated in an in-session working group, if parties agree so. Thank you, Chair.
European Union?
Thank you, Chair. My intervention is on document 37. We thank the Secretariat for the explanation, and we can agree with the way forward. Thank you.
Thank you, EU and Brazil, and we'll close this, close agenda 37. Thank you. So we're back to 35.1, Annex 1. India, can I get you to repeat again your intervention?
Thank you, Madam Chair. India is the view that the process of Article 13 and the proposed Annexure 1 and 2 are still ambiguous. And India suggests that this matter and the draft Annexure 1 and 2 may be deliberated in an in-session working group, if parties agree so.
China, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We want to offer some amendments to the Annex 1 draft decision because it's a very important issue. Directed to the Standing Committee, then delete with the support of the Secretariat 2020 AA with the support from the Animals Committee, Plants Committee, and with input from concerned parties, as appropriate, and then continue. And the second amendment is that the last word in the third line, procedure decided, we want to change it to be procedure determined. Thank you, Madam Chair.
United Kingdom, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The UK supports the recommendations in A, B and C of paragraph 55. Just to reflect on the sentiment of some of the interventions we've heard so far, and as we heard it from a range of parties and observers at the recent Standing Committee 79, there are some concerns at how CITES compliance processes currently work. And while already within the mandate of the Standing Committee, we would like to propose inclusion of an explicit draft decision for the Standing Committee to review how it conducts compliance processes, and I can provide the language now if that's helpful. Yep. So it would be directed to the Standing Committee 20XX, the Standing Committee, with the support and input of the Secretariat, shall consider options to improve how the committee addresses compliance matters in line with Resolution Conf 14.3, Rev CoP19, and submit its recommendations to CoP20.
Can you please just say that again? Thank you.
Yes, of course. So it would be 20XX, the Standing Committee, with the support and input of the Secretariat, shall consider options to improve how the committee addresses compliance matters in line with Resolution Conf 14.3, Rev CoP19, and submit its recommendations to CoP21.
Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We would just like to underscore our support for the draft decision and just maybe respond to some of the proposals that were made. First, on the first sentence, we understand that China looks to include the Animal and Plants Committee as well as implicated party, and we'd like to get a better rationale for including these, the AC and the PC, considering that the Standing Committee is ultimately doing compliance matter. So a rationale would be helpful to consider this proposal. We could accept the proposal from the US to remove the parenthesis, and we can also support to change decide by determine, and we just like to express our support for the UK's proposal. Thank you.
China, can you provide more clarification?
Thank you, Madam Chair, for giving this chance. For the concern from Canada, China believes that because some triggers of the compliance measures are actually initiated from Animals Committee and the Plants Committee, so it's very important to involve the members of these two committees to better form the draft guidelines on the scope and application. So we need to address not only the result, but from the very beginning, from the start. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I open the floor to non-parties and observer organizations. So for China for your intervention and your proposed edits to include Animals Committee and Plants Committee. Animals Committee and Plants Committee are scientific committees. So we do not see the role of them making a decision on compliance, which is why it's directed to the Standing Committee. So maybe I give you some time to reflect on that first, but I will now want to get some reflection on United Kingdom's proposed new draft decision. I open the floor to parties for some reflections on UK's new draft decision. Any strong objection to UK's additional new draft decision? China, you have the floor.
Thank you for for UK's new draft decision. China also want to add into that the input from the concerned parties, because it's very important for them to, from the very beginning, know how to draft this guidance, because at the end of the day, it's them who follow this draft guidance to achieve compliance. That's the suggestion. Include concerned party in.
Okay, I'll just read out. Okay, United States of America, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We see China's point with regard to the inclusion of consultation with the Animals and Plants Committees, since some of these compliance processes arise from processes in those two committees. Our suggestion is perhaps to include a reference to the chairs of those committees rather than the committees more broadly. And then with regard to the suggestion to also include implicated parties in this process or in these considerations in drafting this guidance, where we would oppose that inclusion because it's not clear who those parties would be. I think all of the parties, have the ability to be in these compliance processes. So I think our preference would be to leave it to the Standing Committee with the support of the Secretariat and in consultation with the chairs of the Animals and Plants Committees. Thank you.
Okay, just considering UK's draft decision and also the comments from US and China. So I'm just going to read out the draft decision and then I will get reflections. So Standing Committee with support and inputs from the Secretariat and in consultation with the chairs of AC and PC, consider options to improve how the Standing Committee addresses compliance matters in line with Resolution Conference 14.3, Rev CoP19, and submit the recommendations to COP21. I just want to check if that works for everyone. I can repeat again. Standing Committee with support and inputs from the Secretariat and in consultation with the chairs of Animals Committee and Plants Committee, consider options to improve how the Standing Committee addresses compliance matters in line with Resolution Conference 14.3, Rev CoP19, and submit the recommendations to COP21. So any objection to that? I don't see any requests from the floor. So I will just go through 20AA again because there were edits. With the support of the Secretariat. Oh, sorry. So for 20AA, the edit was to remove or trade for commercial purposes in the parentheses, right? Yeah. So for 20AA is to remove the parentheses and retain the text will be to suspend all trade or trade for commercial purposes. So remove the parentheses. And in specimens of one or more CITES listed species with a party subject to a compliance procedure, decided is replaced with determined. So I would like to see if there's any objection from the floor for these edits. So seeing no objection from the floor, we will agree to the draft decisions on scope and application, a recommendation to suspend trade contained in Annex 1 with the amendments by the US for 20AA and also the new draft decision by the UK. And inputs from China from 28 for the new draft decision. Okay, so now we move to Annex 2, Recommendation 55C, adopt the amendments to Resolution Conference 14.3 contained in Annex 2. I open the floor for parties. United States of America, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. With regard to the proposed amendments to Resolution Conf 14.3 Rev CoP19 contained in Annex 2 to the document, while we welcome the adoption of the Compliance Assistance Plan template, CAP template, we want to be cautious and ensure that the compliance matters do not devolve into a box-checking exercise whereby parties repeatedly fail and have prolonged failure to meet their obligations under the Convention. We believe it will be important to revisit the CAP template after some experience using it, to revise it and consider the potential inclusion of additional mechanisms, such as an independent mechanism to verify the information submitted by parties as appropriate. For the time being, we support adoption of the proposed amendments to Resolution Conf 14.3 Rev CoP19 with a clarifying edit to annex paragraph 29H of the resolution to replace basis with guide to better reflect the purpose of the template. Finally, we recommend replacing agreed with the term adopted in each of the 3 places it occurs in new Annex 2 to the resolution, to ensure that the language reflects the non-binding nature of Standing Committee recommendations. Thank you, Chair.
China, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Regarding the Compliance Action Plan template in Annex 2, China supports it in principle, but emphasizes that it must be clearly positioned as a voluntary reference tool. We suggest that the amended resolution text explicitly reinforce its non-mandatory nature regarding its use. This will allow parties flexibility according to their national circumstances and avoid imposing unnecessary administrative burdens. Thank you, Madam Chair.
China, so I just wanted to get back is on yes, since it's voluntary, which is why I think US edits was as a guide for the compliance action plan to be submitted. So I just wanted to check if that is agreeable.
Yes, as long as it's a voluntary reference tool. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any objection from the floor for the edits? Okay, I open the floor to non-parties and observer organizations. Okay, seeing no, Canada, you have the floor.
Apologies, Chair. Just before you close this item, I just want to make sure I understood the proposed edits. I think I understand the edits from the United States and no concerns there. With regard to the intervention by China, do I understand that to be that China is suggesting the inclusion of voluntary in front of template? And if that is the case,
Canada would be happy to reference the voluntary template in the new edition in paragraph H. And we would also support renaming Annex 2 the voluntary compliance action template if that helps bring more clarity. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, Canada, we can put the voluntary in front, the voluntary template, which means that in Annex 2, the optional will be removed and then replaced with voluntary. So it will just be voluntary compliance action plan template instead of optional. India, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We support the voluntary compliance report as suggested by United States.
Okay, so I'll read the edits now. So for Annex 2, in the little h, the last sentence will be, the voluntary template contained in Annex 2 may be used as a guide for the compliance action plan to be submitted. And then in the new Annex 2, optional will be amended to voluntary. So it reads voluntary compliance action plan template, and also amending agree to adopt it in the actual template. Okay, I see no request from the floor. So the committee agree to the amendments to the resolution conference 14.3 on CITES compliance procedures with the amendments made on the floor, contained in Annex 2 to the present document. And also the committee note the information provided in the present document on the implementation of Article 13 and Resolution Conference 14.3 in accordance with Resolution Conference 11.3. So the committee has agreed for 55A, B, and C. So now the document is closed. Thank you. The next document is 52, Introduction from the Sea. Document 52, submitted by the Standing Committee. The Conference of Parties is invited to adopt a new set of draft decisions contained in the annex to the document, and also delete decisions 19.140 and 19.141. I also draw your attention to the comments made by the Secretariat on the draft decisions. I will now open the floor to parties. Thank you. European Union, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and I speak on behalf of the EU and its member states. We want to thank the Standing Committee for submitting this proposal and support all the tasks that are included in Decision 20 AA. However, the EU and its member states can support Decision 20 BB that should be deleted. Only after the report about the recollection of information referred in Decision 20 AA has been submitted and evaluated by the Standing Committee, should the need for a revision of Resolution Conf 14.6 revised CoP16 be considered. Taking that in consideration, we propose to delete the last part of paragraph A in Decision 20 AA that says, and report as appropriate to the Standing Committee, to include a new paragraph E that will say, submit a report of the outcome of information received from implementation of paragraphs A to D to the 81st meeting of the Standing Committee. Finally, I can repeat if you want. Now? It's okay? Can I repeat it?
Yeah, please repeat.
Sorry. So we propose to delete the last part of little a in the Decision 20 AA that said, and report as appropriate to the Standing Committee, and instead to include a new paragraph E, little e, in decision 20AA, which say, submit a report of the outcome of information received from the implementation of paragraphs A to D to the 81st meeting of Standing Committee. And finally, the EU and the Member States agreed that decisions 19140 and 141 have been implemented and can be deleted. Thank you, Chair.
Japan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. And Japan supports the recommendations in the document and with the proposed amendment by the Secretariat in order to address the relevant recommendations and implementation matters raised at the technical workshop held in Geneva last year. Thank you very much.
United States of America, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. To ensure effective implementation, it is becoming increasingly important to have clarity and a common understanding among parties of the application of relevant provisions of the Convention for Introductory from the Sea. The United States supports the development of additional guidance and clarification regarding implementation of Introductory from the Sea to ensure consistent application of relevant provisions. However, the United States requests the scope of the review of the resolution COP 16.6 Rev COP 16 be limited only to additional text to provide clarification on application of existing frameworks set forth in the resolution. Previously determined provisions regarding flag state and port state responsibilities in the CITES context should remain unchanged. It took years to reach consensus on this resolution and negotiations were contentious. The United States does not support the inclusion of little I from Part A of Draft Decision 20BB as reflecting on the BB&J agreement, and the preamble is not needed to improve implementation of Introductory from the Sea. Under CITES, given the Secretariat's limited resources, we also do not support further effort by the Secretariat at this time to continue to assess potential synergies between the BB&J agreement and CITES. Rather, it is a domestic level of the individual parties that the interplay between the two agreements should be considered. Lastly, the United States supports the proposed amendments in the draft decisions from the Secretariat. For simplicity, the U.S. has combined our proposed edits with the Secretariat's and Information Document 79. If the Chair would like, we could read the edits on the floor, but they are quite a few. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, US, please read it. Thank you.
Thank you. We will read our edits on the Secretariat's version, not the original version found in the annex of the present document. So we have two minor additions for 20AA. So for 20AA, little c, we propose inserting subject to external funding at the beginning of the sentence. So the new text reads, subject to external funding, comma, support parties were inactive in the trade and CITES marine species. The rest is the same. Would you like that one read again, or should I move to the next one?
Yeah, please move on. Thank you.
For 20AA little d, we propose replacing on with for before introductory from the sea. So the new text would read, promote the use of the guidelines for introductory from the sea. The rest would be the same. Would you like me to move to the next one? For 20BB, we have more extensive edits, so please bear with me. For 20BB, little a, we propose deleting with the aim to provide and replacing with limited to providing before clarifications. We also propose insertion of on application of the existing framework set forth in the resolution after clarifications were required.
And then lastly, insert the following before additional elements and delete including at the end. The new text would read, consider the need for and if agreed to prepare a revision of Resolution Comp 14.6 Reb COP 16 on introductory from the sea, limited to providing clarifications were required on application of the existing framework set forth in the resolution, as well as to integrate as appropriate the following additional elements. Let me know if you would like me to move to the next edit. Next edit 20BB, little a, little I. We would propose deletion of the entire little I and renumber as needed. And our last edit for 20BB would be to little new c. We would propose replacement of the with any before proposed amendments, and then we would propose deletion of to the resolution. So the new text would read, submit any proposed amendments for consideration by the 21st meeting of the Conference of Parties. Thank you, Chair.
Australia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We are supportive of the Secretariat's proposed changes. For the US suggestion to include subject to external funding at the beginning of 20 AAC, we consider this work to be a part of CITES' core mandate and suggest that as an alternative we could use the words subject to available resources. We support the US's proposed amendments to 20BBA. However, we do not support the deletion of 20BBA little I. We consider that reflection of the BB&J agreement would be consistent with CITES' recognition of other multilateral agreements, and note that that particular paragraph explicitly states that it notes that not all CITES parties are parties to the BB&J agreement. Thank you, Chair.
China, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. China appreciates the proposed amendments of the U.S. for its pragmatism. China supports U.S. amendments. Thank you, Madam Chair.
European Union, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. In the spirit of compromise, we can accept the proposed changes by the United States with the small amendments. In little a, in the decision 20BB, we prefer, if I understand well, to say, consider the need for, and if agreed, to prepare a guidance for implementation, and then all the other can be the same. And at the same time, in little c, we prefer to submit any guidance for consideration, and then the one is already there. Should I repeat?
Yes, please.
So we can agree with the proposal changes by the United States and with small amendments. In lit A, consider the need for, and if agreed, to prepare a guidance of implementation of, and then everything stays the same. And in little c, to say, submit any guidance for consideration by the 21st meeting of the Conference of Parties. And with the little I in the paragraph A, we can be flexible. Thank you.
United States of America, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The United States can be supportive of the proposed amendments by the European Union regarding 20 BB A and C with having guidance instead. Thank you.
United Kingdom, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The UK welcomes this much-needed work, given the recent listings of species regularly taken from ABNJ and the potential ambiguity among parties on the interpretation and application of introduction from the sea. We support the deletion of decisions 19.140 and 19.141, and we support the Secretariat's proposed amendments to draft decisions 20AA(d) and 20BB(b). We thank the US for their suggested amendments, which, if we've understood correctly, aim to limit the scope of the review of Res CoP 14.6 to avoid opening up the substantive elements of the resolution for discussion. Those previous discussions that we've had were extensive and, to be honest, quite painful at times. For that reason, we would support the compromise that has been suggested by the EU to instead consider the development of guidance. We think that means we might lose consideration of a preambular paragraph on acknowledging the BBNJ agreement in Res CoP 14.6. It would have been our preference to retain that, but in the spirit of compromise, we can accept that as we recognize that this committee has already agreed amendments to reference the BBNJ agreement in Res CoP 16.4 on cooperation with other biodiversity-related conventions as part of the discussions on COP document 13. Finally, we would support the suggestion by Australia to make Secretariat support for parties in implementation of introduction from the sea subject to availability of resources rather than subject to external funding. Thank you.
Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Canada would like to align with the comments just made by the United Kingdom. Thank you.
I open the floor to non-parties and observer organizations. Okay, I see New Zealand and Japan. New Zealand, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, New Zealand would align with the comments that were made by Australia, United Kingdom and Canada. We do see value in producing guidance rather than necessarily opening up the whole resolution. But we do see value in referencing to BB&J, even if that's not fully come into force yet. We're another 3 years that we would look at this again, so I don't see any problem. We may have to have some wording along the lines of where appropriate, but yes, thank you.
Japan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and sorry for taking the floor again. I would say the current status looks okay for us, but could you kindly repeat? Repeat the current wording, just in case? Thank you very much.
Yep. Okay, I'll do that after I take the observer organizations. UN, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have the honor to speak on behalf of my colleague Amber Maggio for the Division for Ocean Affairs and the Law of the Sea of the Office of Legal Affairs of the United Nations, DOALOS. We are pleased to provide some information of relevance to introduction from the sea and consideration of this document. DOALOS acts as the Secretariat of the UNCLOS, the United Nations Fish Stocks Agreement, and currently also performs the Secretariat functions in relation to the BBNJ agreement. The BBNJ agreement, which will enter into force on the 17th of January 2026, currently has 145 signatories and 75 ratifications. This also includes the European Union. Of these 145 signatories, 137 are parties to CITES, while of the 75 ratifications of the agreement, 70 are parties to CITES. The agreement applies to over 2/3 of the ocean and includes provisions for the equitable sharing of benefits from marine genetic resources and digital sequence information on marine genetic resources of areas beyond national jurisdiction, the establishment of area-based management tools, including marine protected areas, the conduct of environmental impact assessments and cooperation in capacity building and the transfer of marine technology. There are clear linkages between the geographical scope of the BBNJ agreement and the regulation of trade in specimens of any species introduced from the sea under CITES, that is in respect of marine species taken from areas beyond national jurisdiction, as well as the application of provisions for environmental impact assessments under the agreement and non-detriment findings, amongst others. These linkages call for...
Yuan, can you please wrap up? It's already 2 minutes. Thank you.
Yeah. These linkages call for cooperation between the two instruments. In this respect, many elements of the BBNJ agreement provide opportunities for cooperation and coordination with the work under CITES. Guided by these linkages, DOALOS continues to enhance its collaboration with the CITES Secretariat, including through our upcoming...
Yuan, please wrap up. I really
Apologies.
have no time yet.
Apologies. An upcoming workshop is to be held next week. Thank you very much.
WCS, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We appreciate the hard work and consensus building that went into the adoption of Resolution COP 14.6 Rev. The resolution is the product of years of debate and final consensus, and as the UK said, a bit painful, on when an introduction from the seas certificate should be issued versus an export permit for specimens taken in A, B, and J. We recognize that more progress is needed on implementation and associated CITES requirements, particularly in light of additional amendments to the appendices that you are adopting even at this COP. But we're not convinced there's been sufficient analysis to warrant revision of the resolution beyond some clarifications, as many parties have stated. We believe that the issues relate to not only understanding by parties of their obligations, but compliance with those obligations and enforcement. And we recommend an enhanced focus on implementation of the Convention for specimens taken in areas beyond jurisdiction, including issuance of appropriate CITES documents and enforcement. And we agree that with Australia, that should be core work of the Secretariat. In conclusion, we support modifications to the annex, but urge parties now and at the next COP not to amend the resolution itself. We also consider that reference to the new UN Biodiversity Beyond National Jurisdiction Agreement would be highly relevant, and we consider it inappropriate to lose that here. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So I have heard from the floor, and I'm just going to propose the way forward. I will read out the edits. Not read out the edits, I'll just read out the clean version. So please bear with me and just follow. And then I'll get reflections from the floor. And also just a reminder, we have 1 hour left, and we still have 4 agenda items from yesterday. We haven't even started today, so yeah. Okay, 28A. The Secretariat shall monitor the implementation of Resolution Conference 14.6 on introduction from the sea, full stop. So, and report as appropriate to the standing committees removed. Then we go to 20AAC, little c. Subject to available resources, support parties which are active in the trade, then the sentence follows. So I repeat again, 20AAC, subject to available resources, support parties then the sentence follows. 20AAD, promote the use of the guidelines. So consider is removed. Promote the use of the guidelines for introduction from the sea on the CITES website among interested parties, and consider updating them if needed based on feedback received by the parties. So I read again. 20AA little d, promote the use of the guidelines for introduction from the sea on the CITES website among interested parties, and consider updating them if needed based on feedback received by the parties. And then there's a new E. So there's a new para E. Submit report of outcome of this information received from implementation of A to D to the 81st meeting of the Standing Committee. So there'll be a new para little e, submit report of outcome of this information received from implementation of A to D to the 81st meeting of the Standing Committee. So 20AA, any objections? Okay, then I'll move on to 20BB. 20BB little a, consider the need for, and if agreed, prepare a guidance of implementation of Resolution Conference 14.6, Rev CoP16, on introduction from the sea, limited to providing clarifications where required on application of the existing framework set forth in the resolution, as well as to integrate as appropriate the following additional elements. I repeat again, 20BB little a, consider the need for, and if agreed, prepare a guidance of implementation of Resolution Conference 14.6, Rev CoP16, on introduction from the sea, limited to providing clarifications where required on application of the existing framework set forth in the resolution, as well as to integrate as appropriate the following additional elements. Then we go to 20BB little a, I has been removed. Then we go to Roman 2, it still remain, and 3 remain. Yeah. Okay, so 20BB little a, the edits as I read out, and then the little I is removed. Then we go to 20BB, a new para little b. 20BB, a new para little b. Consider establishing an intersessional working group with the mandate to support the implementation of subparagraph A above, and subject to available resources, organize consultations and meetings to this end, and. So I repeat again this paragraph, 20BB little b, consider establishing an intersessional working group with the mandate to support the implementation of subparagraph A above, and subject to available resources, organize consultations and meetings to this end. And then we go to little c, submit any guidance for consideration by the 21st meeting of the Conference of the Parties. So 20BB little c, submit any guidance for consideration by the 21st meeting of the Conference of the Parties. I open the floor. Any objections to the edits read out? Is it clear? If it's not clear, please press your button. Okay, so I do not see any requests from the floor. So the Conference of the Parties is invited to, the committee agrees to the draft decisions on introduction from the sea contained in the annex as amended at the floor, and also delete decisions 19.140 and 19.141. And I close this agenda item. Thank you. Okay, next item, document 103, annotations. We're looking at 103, annotations submitted by the Standing Committee and reports on the implementation of Decision 16.162 on annotations and proposes new decisions. So I open the floor for parties to express the views for the recommendations listed in paragraph 14. United Kingdom, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The United Kingdom thanks the members of the Standing Committee Annotations Working Group for their hard work, and we support the decisions and recommendations A to D in paragraph 14 of the document and the deletion of decision 16.162. Thank you.
United States of America, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The United States concurs with the intervention from the United Kingdom. Thank you.
Republic of Korea, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Republic of Korea would first like to thank the annotation working group for its work, and we note the outcomes report to this COP. Korea also appreciates the leadership of the UK, who chaired the group and who were pleased to participate as a member. Korea supports the establishment of working group on annotations as outlined in draft decision. In particular, regarding paragraph draft decision 20.xx, a little III, Korea hopes that the reconstituted working group will address the technical issue we raised earlier during the discussion of CoP20 Prop 41, namely the different approach between interpretation paragraph 5 of the appendices and resolution COP 11.11, left COP18 paragraph 6, sub-paragraph B, little III. As this difference may lead to practical confusion in the management of artificially propagated hybrid plant. Korea looks forward to contributing actively to the future work, the new annotation working group. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Republic of Korea, can I just get clarification that you support A, B, and then you were making amendments to C, to Annex 3?
Yes.
What amendments? Could you just say it out again?
Sorry, I just suggest the concerning of this working group mandate. It's not amendment of the draft decision.
Thank you. I open the floor to non-parties and observer organizations. Okay, so seeing no requests from the floor, the committee agrees to the proposed amendment of Resolution Conference 10.13, RevCop 18, on implementation of the Convention for Tree Species contained in Annex 1, agree to the proposed amendment of the interpretation section of the appendices contained in Annex 2, agree to the draft decision 20XX on annotations contained in Annex 3, delete decision 16.162 RevCop 19. I close this agenda item. Thank you, everyone. Okay, I open the item for 104, annotation 15, document 104, submitted by the Secretariat in consultation with the Vice Chair of the Standing Committee. So I open the floor to seek parties' views on two issues: whether you support the proposed draft decisions on traceability systems for CITES-listed species, or whether further amendments or additional decisions are needed, and whether you agree to direct the Secretariat to publish the report on the CITES website. I open the floor to parties. United States of America, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The United States thanks the Secretariat for its work in preparing the report on the impact of CITES exemptions for Dalbergia and Guerbertia. We believe the report is comprehensive and support the Conference of the Parties requesting the Secretariat to publish the revised report on the webpage on CITES and forests. We also consider that decisions 18.321 RevCop 19 and 18.322 RevCop 19 have been completed and can be deleted. With regard to the draft decisions on traceability systems for CITES-listed tree species contained in Annex 1 to the document, we support adoption of the draft decision 20.AA subparagraph A, which directs the Secretariat to issue a notification to the parties, inviting submission on information on traceability systems for CITES-listed tree species and the utility of information available on the traceability website, webpage on the CITES website. We do not support adoption of draft decision 20.AA subparagraph B, which directs the Secretariat to consult with the United Nations Center for Trade Facilitation and Electronic Business and other standard-setting bodies and relevant organizations and prepare a report for consideration of the Standing Committee. We are aware that numerous traceability models and guidelines are already available, and we do not see the benefit in having the Secretariat undertake a study of them in order to try to develop guidelines or specific standards relevant to CITES-listed tree species. We believe that paragraph B of draft decision 20.AA should be deleted and necessary amendments to draft decisions 20.AA and 20.BB be made to reflect the deletion. If the Conference of the Parties decides consistent with this position, the US $40,000 estimated by the Secretariat for preparation of the report would not be needed, and the work could be undertaken within the core mandate. Thank you, Chair.
Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. So Canada welcomes this report and the reflections on future work. Canada also had some concerns on the scope of the work, noting that there are over 800 tree species listed in CITES, and so we wanted to recommend a narrowing of scope to help focus the work. And so we can provide our proposed edits, noting that if the recommendation from the United States is agreed, they may not be necessary. But nonetheless, for paragraph 20AA, subparagraph A, we wanted to insert a new Roman I and then have the renumbering accordingly to ask for a notification to the parties requesting parties to provide information on, and so our new I would read, tree species where there are challenges in enforcement and key enforceability issues that would benefit from further guidance. And then in current subparagraph A, little I, after, in the second line after tree species, we would insert where there are challenges in enforcement. And then in decision 20AA, subparagraph B, if it's retained, in the subparagraph little I, at the end where it says tree species, we would also insert where there are challenges in enforcement. Our intent, again, was to narrow the scope from 800 listed tree species to those where this work would be particularly beneficial. Thank you, Chair.
European Union, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The EU and its member states welcome the revised report on the impact of CITES exemptions for Daubergia and Geburtia, and its summary as contained in Annex 3 and 2 to the document. We conclude from the report that Annotation 15 is actively implemented by parties, proved to be effective in regulating trade, and exemptions under Annotation 15 have a low conservation impact for most of the species. As such, we do not see concerning elements that would justify to prolong work as proposed by the proposed decision in Annex 1, based on the recommendation B in paragraph 24 of the document. As indicated by the Secretariat, the implementation of the decisions is expected to have workload and budgetary implications for the Secretariat and the Standing Committee. Seeing the outcomes, we do not see merit in prolonging this work, but would be open to some suggestions as just made by other parties. We do support recommendations C and D in paragraph 24 of the document. Yes, and perhaps recommendation A will be redundant if recommendation B will be deleted. Thank you.
India, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. India wishes to thank the Secretariat for the CoP20 Doc 104. The exemption through paragraph C of annotation 15 serve as an effective regulatory measure for trade, while simultaneously addressing the specific requirements of music industry. It significantly minimizes the risk of illegal exploitation and over-harvesting of the species. This focus exemption reduces pressure on wild population because raw material and semi-finished product remain controls under the CITES regulation. India therefore supports the retention of paragraph C of annotation 15. Nonetheless, on the issue of traceability system for CITES listed tree species as proposed by Secretariat, India wishes to bring to notice of this committee that the key area requiring global attention is the development of equitable traceability and legality system. Small landholders and community producers who forms the backbone of sustainable supply chain, therefore it will be appropriate to examine the model of risk proportionate due diligence and inclusive verification that ensures strengthening of traceability without excluding small producer. Hence, India is of the opinion that unless the parties are well equipped with updated technical capacities with adequate financial resources coupled with implementation of risk appropriate models, the decision on traceability may be premature for implementation. Thank you, ma'am.
I open the floor to non-parties and observer organizations. China, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. China thanks the Secretariat for its work in implementing the decisions and preparing the report. Given the large number of tree taxa listed, establishing a single or to research the traceability system will be difficult. So we therefore hope the work can be built up step by step and support Canada's proposed amendment to that end. Thank you, Chair.
United States of America, just coming back to you. So I think you suggested for deletion of 20AA little b. I think there was some compromise to scope the work. So I just want to get some reflections from you if there could be a compromise to just scope the work. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think our preference would be to continue to support the deletion of this subparagraph while we take the point of attempting to limit the scope to those species where there are implementation and enforcement challenges. Our sense is that remains quite a broad list, and so we would still suggest the deletion of subparagraph B. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I will go through the edits one by one, and then I'll get reflections. Our European Union, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Hearing the floor, I think we can align ourselves with the USA and then accept the edits as proposed by Canada on 20AA little a. Thank you.
Thank you. So I will just repeat the edit. So for 20AA little a, there'll be a new little I. So after issue a notification to the parties, requesting parties and organizations to provide information to the Secretariat on, then there'll be a new para, little I, tree species where there are challenges in enforcement and key enforceability issues that would benefit from further guidance. So that's the new para. And then in 20AA little a, the new para Roman 3, it starts with the usefulness of the information. Then at the second sentence where there's traceability systems for tree species, where there are challenges with enforcement. So that's the additional text. So after tree species, where there are challenges in enforcement. And then we remove 20AA little b. So little b will be deleted and the rest will be retained. Is that clear, everyone? If it's not clear, please press your button. Any objection? Seeing no requests from the floor, the committee is invited, the committee agrees to the revised report contained in Annex 3, agree to adopt the draft decisions in Annex 1 and with amendments proposed from the floor, as read out just now, agree to request the Secretariat to publish the revised report on the impact of CITES exemptions for Dalbergia and Gibraltar contained in Annex 3 in the website on CITES and forests, and delete decisions 18.321 and 18.322. I see no requests from the floor. Thank you very much, everyone, and I close this item. So the next agenda item is 105 on implications of the transfer of a species from one appendix to another. So there's two documents, 105.1 submitted by the Secretariat at the request of the Standing Committee, and 105.2 submitted by the United States of America. So my suggestion is to discuss the two documents one by one. So we will look at document 105.1 first. So I open the floor to parties. European Union, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The EU and its member state thank the Secretariat for this guidance on the implications on the transfer of species from one appendix to the other. We support the recommendation under paragraph 11, letter A of Doc 105.1, with the following addition to the draft guidance in Annex 2 that we consider important. In paragraph 15, letter B, point 1, the word should be changed into could, and the following sentence should be added after the word convention. Besides an issued pre-convention certificate, comma, the bill of lading and or customs declarations and or other documents can be considered as further proof of export. We also support the recommendation.
European Union, sorry, can you just repeat that again?
Yes, thank you. In paragraph 15, letter B, point 1, the word should be changed into could, right after the words the state of export. And the following sentence should be added after the word convention. And the sentence is, besides an issued pre-convention certificate, comma, the bill of lading and or custom declarations and or other documents can be considered as further proof of export. We will be glad to send this text in writing if we can be helpful. Can I go on?
Yes, please.
Thank you. We also support the recommendation under paragraph 11, letter B of the document 105.1. However, we believe that the guidelines provided under paragraph 15, letter B, point 2 of the draft guidance on the situation when the rules applicable to trade in a particular species or specimen change after specimens of the species left the port of export, but before they reach the port of import, need further analysis on the following issues. 1. If the state of import can issue an import permit for not commercial purposes, according to Article 3, Paragraph 3, letter C of the Convention, in cases when the export was for commercial trade, according to Article 4 of the Convention, and the conditions of Article 4 are fulfilled, but not the conditions of Article 3. Second, if the imported specimen can be commercially traded after the import, given that it falls under Appendix 1 regime. Therefore, we propose to amend Draft Decision 20AA in Annex 1 of the document to task the Standing Committee to establish an intersessional working group. We demanded to clarify, in the case of a transfer of a species to Appendix 1, the consequences of considering the import to be done according to Article 3, Paragraph 2 and 3 of the Convention after the entry into effect of the amendment. We will be happy to provide the draft amendment of Decision 20A in writing, or if you want, I can read it now.
You can read it now.
Thank you. So for the first paragraph for 20AA, add the following. The Standing Committee still established an international working group on the situation when the rules applicable to trade change after a specimen of a particular species left the port of export, but before it reaches the port of import, with the following terms of reference. A. To clarify...
European Union, sorry, can I trouble you to just read slowly?
I'm sorry, I was doing that for the sake of time, but I was wrong. I start again. The Standing Committee shall establish an intersessional working group on the situations where the rules applicable to trade change after a specimen of a particular species left the port of export, but before it reaches the port of import, with the following terms of reference. A. To clarify, in the case of a transfer of a species to Appendix 1, after the entry into effect of the amendment, the consequences of considering the import according to Article 3, paragraphs 2 and 3 of the Convention. First, if the state of import can issue an import permit for not commercial purposes, according to Article 3, paragraph 3, letter C, when the export was for commercial trade, according to Article 4, and the condition of Article 4 are fulfilled, but not the condition of Article 3. Second, if the imported specimen can be traded commercially after import, given that it then falls under the Appendix 1 regime. Letter B, the working group shall be composed of parties from as many of the 6 CITES regions as possible, and relevant intergovernmental and non-governmental organizations, and will communicate through electronic media. C, and last, the working group shall submit a report and recommendations for amendments to guidance and best practices related to periods of transition and possible transitory measures, if necessary, to the 82nd meeting of the Standing Committee, which shall report with its recommendation at the 21st meeting of the Conference of the Parties. Finally, we support the deletion of decision 18.151. If we will be glad to provide text ready in writing if can be of some help. Thank you.
United States of America, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. With regard to the suggested amendments to the draft guidance that were just proposed by the European Union concerning the issuance of CITES documents, and then also looking at other documents and considering those as proof of lawful export, and those documents including, for example, bills of lading, we would not support that addition to the draft guidance at this point. The examples of the documents that were provided by the European Union in its suggested amendment here, those are not CITES documents, and for a number of countries, including, for example, the United States, we cannot consider them in place of CITES documents. So we would not support that amendment. With regard to the suggested amendments to draft decision 20.AA and Annex 1 to the document, we acknowledge that the Standing Committee is already being directed in this draft decision to consider this draft guidance that we have before us and further refine it during the next intersessional period. And so we're not sure whether the additional specificity provided by the European Union is really needed at this time, since it is already contemplated that the Standing Committee will revisit this this guidance during the next intersessional period. With those couple of comments, the United States supports encouraging parties to consult the draft guidance and adopt the draft decision found in the annex as presented by the Secretariat, as well as deletion of decision 18.151 Rev CoP19. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, I would like to remind parties that the draft guidance is still in work, right? Because in 20AA, the Standing Committee still further consider the draft guidance. So parties do not need to actually add additional text into the guidance now. You know, it goes back to Standing Committee, and also intersessional work will continue. And also on EU's comment that it wants to look at when the specimen is being transferred, what happens when it's left the port and before they reach the port of import. These are already in the draft guidance, which means that the Standing Committee will look at it, will review the draft guidance. So it is already inside there. So I just want to remind parties when you make your intervention that, the guidance is still being reviewed. Yeah. European Union, you can have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. In the spirit of cooperation, we delete the proposed amendment that established an intersessional working group, while we think it would be useful to keep the question that we read inside the decision 20AA to task specifically Standing Committee with the assistance of the Secretariat to deal with such issues because they are truly relevant. About the proposed changes to paragraph B, with the ones of the bill on lending, to be clear, we are referring to case of a first inclusion in the appendices. So we are aware are not CITES documents, but we are also aware that before the first inclusion, no CITES documents apply to the specimens. That's why we propose such clarification. Thank you.
Yeah, European Union, I think just to clarify, like I said, the draft guidance where you actually wanted amendments for 15B, it's still being worked on by the Standing Committee and intersessionally. So you can propose the amendment then. And also, I noted your comment that you wanted the Standing Committee to specifically look at the issue. So we will note it in the summary record, but you can bring it up during Standing Committee meeting again. Yeah, thank you. I will move to Brazil. Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Brazil appreciates the Secretary efforts in preparing the draft guidance under notification. This draft guidance, our recent experience during the listing of Androanthus and dipteric species showed how divergent interpretation among parties during transition periods can generate uncertainty and significant harm to bona fide exporters and importers. We note that the other parties, including the US, in document CoP20 ad hoc as 105.2, have also acknowledged the systematic nature of those challenges. To ensure predictability and informed implementation, Brazil considers that the most objective and effective solution is to apply CITES requirements in force at the time of export, as evidenced by the Bill of Landing. This avoids retroactive obligations, prevents conflicts between authorities, and aligns with the structure of the Convention, which places the core regulatory responsibility on the exporting states. And this is not reflected in the current guidance. So at this point, we cannot accept the paragraph 15b little I, since it goes against our legislation, Madam Chair. We cannot, Brazil, our legislation doesn't allow us to issue pre-convention certificates, and for this reason we would be glad to continue discussing these guidelines, but we cannot afford having little I at this point. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brazil. So for 15B little I repeat again, this, we will note your concerns in the summary record and you can bring up again at standing committee because they are still doing further work on it. Japan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our basic position is we prefer to have some guidance now rather than waiting for the internal session discussion. However, we also agree to have discussion toward SC 81. However, we believe that as Secretariat mentioned in 105.1, the issue of transition period associated with the trade suspensions should also be addressing during these discussions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I open the floor to non-parties and observer organizations. Okay, so I don't see any requests from the floor. So my sensing from the floor is that there's no amendments made to 28A in Annex 1. Which is in recommendations 11B. So the committee agree to the draft decision on guidance related to periods of transition contained in Annex 1 to the present document. And also the committee agreed that we encourage parties to consult the revised draft guidance and best practices in Annex 2 and delete decision 18.151 Rev CoP 19. Just want to, is that clear? And we noted the comments from the parties as well on their concerns. Okay, then I will close this agenda item. Thank you. Okay, we will now go through, because the next agenda item is quite complicated, so we will not start the item. We will do the summary record 5. Interpreters, can I have 10 minutes, please? Thank you. Summary record 5. I open the floor to parties if they have any corrections. Okay, I see no requests from the floor. So we will adopt summary record 5. Summary record 6. I open the floor to parties for corrections. Summary record 6. Okay, I see no requests from the floor, so we adopt summary record 6. I'll pass the floor to Secretariat for housekeeping.
Thank you, Chair. There are a few working groups. Oh, sorry.
Germany, you have the floor.
I think it's about, thank you for the floor. It's my first time speaking. I'm a little nervous. I think it's on document 63, my colleague yesterday said that, I will just read what she said. Give me a second. Can I have one minute to find it? Okay, she wrote to me, the European Union and its member states reminded that Standing Committee 87 mandated the Secretariat to consider the matters related to interpretation and application of footnote 1 of Resolution Conf 11.10, Ref CoP 18, in its report to the next meeting of the Animals Committee, and I think that was left out from the summary record 6. We were approached yesterday by the Secretariat again to mention that we mentioned it, and you told us that you've considered or have taken it up. Thank you.
Okay, noted. Germany, yeah. United States of America.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The United States just had a question regarding Doc 49 legal acquisition findings. In paragraph 3, the summary record talks about Brazil introducing amendments to the draft guidance. However, it's not clear in the document what happened with those amendments that was introduced by Brazil to the draft guidance. I know there is a ComDoc that's coming out that's talking about the draft decision, that they're going to be reviewing the draft guidance, but is that the draft guidance as amended by Brazil? It's not clear what happened with Brazil's proposed edits. That wasn't necessarily clarified on the floor or clear in the summary record.
I'll pass the floor to Secretariat to clarify.
Thank you, Chair. The understanding of the Secretariat was that the working group would consider draft decisions to work further on this guidance in the next intersessional period. So there were a ComDoc that's been issued to have these decisions consider further the draft guidance in the next intersessional period, together with some additional questions or issues raised by the European Union. And therefore, our understanding was that the guidance would remain unchanged at this meeting. Thank you.
Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Precisely on that same point, we don't think that the summary record reflects what was concluded in this item, because of course Brazil, which was also with the support, which talked also on behalf of Argentina, Belize, Colombia, Costa Rica, Ecuador, Guatemala, Honduras, Panama, and Uruguay, suggested modifications to the draft guidance. And we understand from your conclusion, Madam Chair, that it's not only the proposed contributions from the European Union and the United States that should be taken into account. Of course, other countries should also be taken into account. So we are very puzzled with this summary record, and we'll urge the Secretariat to revise this conclusion so as to include the discussions in the floor to be taken into consideration this ComDoc. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
I'll pass the floor to the Secretariat.
Thank you, Brazil. As you probably know, these sessions are live webcast on YouTube, and the recording is there. So we will go back to the recording, listen to the conclusion of the chair, and double check that whatever the chair said at the end is accurately reflected in the summary record. Thank you.
Okay, I pass to the Secretary for housekeeping.
Okay. Housekeeping announcements. There are a few working groups that will take place tonight. First of all, working group on agenda item 79.1. Sorry. Pangolins, 79.1, will meet tonight at 5:15 here in the Committee 2 room. So 79.1 pangolins in Committee 2 room here, which means all delegates who are not part of this working group are kindly requested to leave the Committee 2 room before 17:15 to allow this working group to start in a timely manner. The second working group on agenda item 48, proposal to amend resolution COP 12.3, Rev COP 19, is taking place at 5:30 in the SAIGA room. So working group on agenda item 48, 17:30 in SAIGA room. Working group on Pau Brasilia Equinata is taking place at 5:15 in the Eulopia room. Working group on Pau Brasilia in Eulopia room at 17:15. Lastly, there may be other working groups that will be likely taking place tomorrow or on Monday, more likely on Monday. So please keep checking the COP20 webpage on the CITES website, as well as the COP20 app for any updates on when and where these working groups are taking place. Other housekeeping announcements: if there are any participants planning to access the venue during the 2-day break outside of the working groups, please inform the CITES Secretariat so that we can inform the security accordingly. It is considered that most people will not be accessing the venue, so if you do plan to do so, please let us know. Also, the host country has informed us that there will be no shuttle buses running tomorrow and on Monday. So if you do need to come to the venue, you may need to find other means of transport to get here. Lastly, we would like to remind participants to leave the headset and receivers on your desk, and please do not take them back to the hotel. And also, the security kindly requests that baggage should under no circumstances be left unattended. Thank you for taking note and for your support in this regard. And with that, I wish you a very good 2-day break, and see you on Tuesday. Thank you. The Bureau is also meeting soon after this session is over. Thank you.